Hi, Francy. It's nice to have you in another class, and I saw your name, and that's what drew me to read your or your initial discussion post. So, hello again, and I was really happy that I read through your post because you hit three primary things that really kind of struck me, and I'd like to highlight those. The first one that you said comes in the kind of the latter part, the second paragraph of your response. And you had talked about not having a lot of at least professional experience in behavioral sciences, but I just think it's interesting because what you developed in your simple day-to-day experience with behavioral sciences, I feel are probably the most important ones. I talked to a couple of professional counselors prior to choosing to come into this program, and I bet you if I talked with them that they would agree with me on what you came up with here. That you've seen three primary things. The first was how culture affects behavior. Um, I don't think it's a secret to anybody. Culture certainly affects your behavior. I mean, if anyone's traveled outside of the United States, they can see how people of different cultures and different backgrounds they certainly react differently. They behave differently, and whether that be as simple as the way people say hello or just say goodbye, or the values and beliefs that they have regarding family and ancestors and religion. So I have certainly seen how culture affects behavior as well. The second thing that you state is childhood trauma and how that affects certain reactions. A lot of things come to mind with this. In particularly, I want to just approach the topic of overreaction and even underreaction when it comes to childhood trauma. Whether or not a person was abused or as a child, or simply experienced something traumatic, maybe even as a third party to it, they might over or underreact to things that might seem a little odd. For instance, someone who was abused as a child, as they mature and as they grow older, when people or their spouse or their siblings or other people, other adults in their life, if some sort of altercation that has one or the other raising their voice, they tend to react very differently than it would if someone has not experienced some sort of traumatic event that may have had the raising of voices involved in that. The final thing is really near and dear to my heart, but you had said that people with special needs, they learn very different and in very different ways. So my son has high functioning autism, and we believe my youngest daughter does as well, although she has not been diagnosed, unlike my son, who has been clinically diagnosed. We have this we have this great ABA therapy that we've been involved with, and over the last about 2 years, my wife and I had to learn how to parent my son differently. Why? Because of what you said. He learns differently, and in very different ways. And having three kids that all learn differently than the other, having my oldest be autistic and having extraordinarily different ways that he learns, it was interesting. And honestly, as hard as it was more rewarding simply because, man, autistic people are incredible and they have something that we'll never have. And that is just a very interesting view of the world. So I wanted to respond to you just because experience or not experience with behavioral sciences, I think you hit the nail on the head with this, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, and have a blessed time. And I'll hear from you next week.